You're listening to NDOI, America's Insurance Talent Showcase, featuring this week's Million Dollar Producer.
Not every million-dollar producer started small and built a book slowly over time. This week's million-dollar producer, Rob Brignone, struggled and failed a lot to the point where some people questioned whether insurance was really his thing. But Rob wouldn't hear any of that. He figured it out and is here to tell us how he flipped that switch. Rob, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this has been a record year for you, hitting the $1 million revenue mark. Again, not premium, but actual revenue to the agency. So give me a little bit of your story.
A client of mine, when I was in the mortgage industry, Greg Krause, he's the president of our company, company I currently work for. We closed a deal that I did with him. It was June of 2007, and the mortgage industry had just tanked, and I had my own business. It's a small little mortgage company with me and a buddy and a couple employees, and we basically went belly up almost overnight. The deals weren't coming in, and long story short, he offered me the opportunity, and I jumped on it. So when I started in the business, I knew absolutely nothing about insurance. I didn't even know what an umbrella policy was. The first 12 months, I did well. I wrote, $1.5 million in premium, which I think was about $100,000, and I felt like I was getting it. And I thought I could do this. And so I went to work out of the Sacramento office because I was working these grueling hours that left me no life outside of work. And so, spending 5 hours commuting, I told Greg Krause, hey, I need to go to Sacramento. I have friends there. I can have a life there and still do my job. And so he said, okay, that's fine. It was about 4 months after I was there. I'll never forget, he picked up the phone one day and he called me and he said, do you want to work here? And I said, what do you mean, do I want to work here? He said, I'm going to come up with Pam. We're going to take you out to lunch and talk. When I got up there, I had left the nest too early and I fell flat on my face. I totally stopped writing business. I stopped binding accounts. When I was working closely with Pam and Greg, I was binding most of the deals I was working on. And when I got to Sacramento, I was still putting in hours, 10, 12 hours a day, but I wasn't writing any business. And all of a sudden, I was going backwards. They said, we know you want this. We know you can do it. We're going to bring you back on our team. We're going to have you work on our accounts. You're going to basically be a marketing broker for us, which is something I hadn't done. I was working on my own deals, but I didn't start as a marketing broker. I started as a producer. So they brought me back in. I was on the phone almost all day long, going through ins and outs of deals and just working with them on every single deal that I touched. And I started working deals from the beginning to the end, and I started closing business, and I started getting more confidence. I started just realizing, okay, I can do this.
Well, once you made the decision, I can do this, what changed?
I started exuding confidence to my clients, and I think they picked up on it. I closed a few really tough deals that were just really tough from the beginning to the end, one problem after another. And I realized I'm getting pretty good at this. And I actually beat some of my competitors that had, a lot more experience in the business. Once I realized that I could do it, I just took off. I started going out and asking for business. I started getting business. I started closing deals. Business was getting referred to me.
Rob, as you were growing your business, it sounded to me, as we talked earlier, that it took some real jumps in the last few years in revenue. Give us an idea of what those jumps look like and what contributed to such large jumps in revenue over the last few years.
The first was some lofty goals. I set some really high goals for myself. 2013, my goal was to finish with $500,000 in revenue. When I was hovering around the couple 100,000 revenue mark. Prior to that, I closed that year with about 460,000 in revenue. And then 2014, I closed the year about 700,000 in revenue. This last year, my goal was $1 million, and I finished just over $1 million. I think the one thing that really helped me get that done, the most important thing, was writing those goals down on paper and really working through my skim book and setting those goals, writing them down, breaking them down, and saying, what is it going to take to accomplish each one of these goals? And I really used my partners and my mentors to hold me accountable and to help and work through those goals. And I think that was a huge part of it.
Where did this drive, this inner ambition come from?
You know, my mother had me when she was 16 years old. Her story and her drive. In my early years in this business, I just thought, there's no way I can do less than that. I mean, she worked so hard and she sacrificed so much, and that's what kept me going in the beginning. And then as I got going, things changed for me. I met my wife, who I'm married to now, and we have 2 little girls. And every day when my alarm goes off at 4 a.m. and I don't want to get up, you know, I just picture our dream home with our swimming pool and our grandkids playing out there and hanging out with our kids. And, you know, it's just the life that I want to create for them.
When you and I talked earlier, you told me the mayonnaise story. So tell the mayonnaise story.
So my mom was 16 when she had me. And at the time, when she was about 20, 21, we were living in this low-income housing apartments. And I was 5 years old. And it was around lunchtime one day, and I was happy that day, just jumping around. I ran over to the refrigerator, and I was going to make a sandwich, and I grabbed a jar of mayonnaise, and I'll never forget, it slipped out of my hands. I dropped it in the middle of the kitchen, and it shattered everywhere. And my mom looked at me, and she got down on her hands and knees, started picking up the glass, and she just started crying. She started crying, and it was then that I realized the situation that we were in, and the sacrifices that she was making for me. And her going through that, I couldn't never not do my best and just make her proud.
It sounds like her son picked up a little bit from his mom.
I did. I definitely did. She is definitely a mentor and an idol, and I definitely want to make her proud.
So you work on the wholesale side of insurance, and your clients are insurance agents. How do you see that as being either an advantage or a disadvantage in terms of where you are operating in the insurance industry?
I think it's an extreme advantage because a lot of the clients that I align myself with, a lot of my retail brokers, they really understand insurance. So it's not like on the retail side, you have to try to explain insurance to your client. My clients already understand insurance. So it allows me to focus on, you know, doing what I need to do to them for them to get their deal closed instead of explaining things to them. So I think that helps a lot. I think it's an advantage. I think a major disadvantage is on the wholesale side, our job is to make the retail agent's life easier and keep them happy. We also have to keep our underwriters happy at the same time. So you're getting pulled both ways. You know, your retail agent's job is to keep their insured happy, and the insured wants all these things that your retail agent is asking you to do, and the underwriter doesn't want to do those things because the market doesn't want to do those things. So it's this constant pull back and forth, and it's a tough balancing act. It's there's definitely an art and a science to keeping both parties happy and creating a win-win for everybody.
How do you handle it when you know that you have the best program out there for the client, but your retailer is just not able to sell it?
That's happened to me a few times. You know, I've always just made myself available. Sometimes if I feel like they can't get the deal closed, I will try to be there as their partner. And typically, as a wholesaler, you don't have contact with the insured. You're the middleman. So what I'll do in those situations is I'll offer it up, and usually they'll take me up on it, and I'll help them sell the deal.
So what do you say when a retailer says that being a wholesaler is much easier because you're not having to hunt down the relationship or develop the relationship, and it's much easier to make $1 million revenue when you're on the wholesale side?
It's the equivalent to Larry Bird, one of the best free throw shooters of all time. But what people don't see, they see him make every free throw in a game. But what they don't see is that he used to do 153 free throws every morning before school. A lot of times we don't share the pain we're going through with our client because we don't want to burden them with that. So there may be 15 questions that I get back from an underwriter on every deal, but I'll work through 90% of those and I'll only ask my retail broker 2 questions. They don't see what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, pretty much every deal that we work, we're trying to get something done for them that, the market might not want to do.
Give us 3 things you've learned that if you learned them earlier, you might be farther along today.
If I would have learned earlier to not be afraid to fail, I really do think that I'd have a $2 million book right now. It's taken me almost 8 years to get to, I finished a little over $1 million this year. I think if I would have just realized that it's okay to fail, and in some cases it's necessary to fail, I would have picked up the phone earlier and just called and asked for business. I would have done things that I was really afraid to do in the beginning because, God, what if I call and ask for this deal and they say, no, I already gave it to, one of my competitors. It's like, who cares? I wish I would have learned that early on. I think the second thing is I've become close friends with a lot of my retailers. A lot of my customers are good friends of mine. When I really started to build relationships with my underwriters and my clients and customers, it really advanced their trust in me. It made them realize that I have the same core beliefs and values and I'm a good guy and they love giving me their business. And I think if I would have done that a lot earlier, it would have developed my relationships that I have today a lot quicker. The third thing, probably the biggest thing, is I wish I would have learned in the very beginning to be a doer rather than a dreamer and a wisher, to actually take the steps and set your goals and write them down and hold yourself accountable and achieve them. That's a whole different ballgame. When I realized that, that's when it really changed things for me. I started tapping into the resources that I had, which were $1 million producers. Go figure, they know how to make $1 million. Once I did that and I, started using my skim book to write down my goals and hold myself accountable and have other people within our agency hold me accountable, it was amazing how much it changed things for me. And if I would have done that in the beginning, I'd be twice as far as I am today. But, that's part of the learning process, I guess.
Do you specialize?
I do. I specialize in transportation and trucking. That's about 90% of my book. Anything that has to do with trucking for hire, cargo, excess, physical damage, that's about 90% of my book.
Rob, we talked about your absolute must-have go-to carriers. You have many carriers that you could access, but I asked you if you could only take a small group of them with you, who would they be? You told me Canal, XL, Scottsdale, AIG Lexington, and National Indemnity. Why did you pick this group of carriers? What do they do for you? And why is it that you couldn't live without them?
It's ironic that every one of those that you just named, I didn't even realize this when I gave you those, but every one of my underwriters that's at each of those markets, I have a great relationship with, a friendship with. These markets, they trust me. They know that I'm going to do right by them. They work hard for me. They know that I work hard for them. I think one of the main reasons is because they know we have their best interest in mind. I'm going to be around for a long time. I want them to be around for a long time. I need them, and I treat them that way, and they realize that. My success depends directly on their stamina in this industry. I'm a young guy and I plan on having a long, successful career, and I know these markets want to be around for a long time. So I think we have a mutual understanding that I'm going to do right by you. I'm always going to tell you the truth. I'm always going to give you the upfront, and if we come face problems, we'll work through it together and we'll do our best to create a win-win for both of us. And I think every one of those carriers has the same culture and the same ideas that I do.
So what's the one thing you want to leave with insurance agents that are trying to hit that $1 million level? What's the one thing you think they need to know?
I think the most important thing is that the deals that are easy are not the deals that are going to make you better at what you do. The ones where you have to maybe dig out a policy form and read it. Maybe you have to change an underwriter's mind to do a complete 180. You hit all these roadblocks along the way. You feel like you're never going to get it done. You've worked for months and months on this deal, and at the 11th hour, it's falling apart, and you don't know what you're going to do. When you face all of those things and you get that deal done, those are the deals that make you good at what you do. And that's what makes you better than 99% of the people out there, because most people would quit. But when you don't take no for an answer and you work your fingers to the bone to the very end, and I think that that's the one thing that I would tell producers.
Rob, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
The National Directory of Insurance is committed to doing all we can to up our game with the people we serve. Nominations are now open, so if you know a $1 million producer who we can learn from, please let us know by emailing us at executiveservices@ndoi.com. That's executiveservices@ndoi.com.